Hello and welcome to another episode of Full Court Finance here at Zacks. I'm your host, Ben Rains. And today we're talking about the streaming revolution and specifically focusing on streaming sports. And at the moment, it looks like Disney and Amazon might be set to dominate that space. But we're going to take a look at them and then speculate on maybe who else will join them. But before we do any of that, I want to say, remember, if you have any questions or episode suggestions, please feel free to shoot us an email over at podcast@zacks.com. Also, make sure to subscribe and leave a review wherever you listen to your podcasts. So, live sports are maintaining their viewership numbers in large part just as things are growing and going in that direction. Even baseball, which is not a national sport by any means, it doesn't get talked about a lot on, as I said, big national talk shows or anything like that on ESPN, but it's a top local performer throughout the summer in many small and even large markets. Overall, live sports are helping kind of prop up the $70 billion television ad industry because really at this point, what else do you need to watch live when you have the ability? Most people have the ability to either record or watch their favorite shows on Netflix and HBO. So at this point, I'm going to read just a quick quote from Rich Greenfield, who is a media analyst from BTIG Research, and this was a quote from the Wall Street Journal recently. So he said, "Sports are holding up the entire ecosystem," referring to television. "I call it a Jenga game. Pull the sports block out and the entire system collapses." So that's a media analyst saying what we're trying to say is that live sports are really driving linear TV at the moment and really the last big thing that's holding up the entire industry. So, for example, last year, Sunday Night Football was the most popular regular scheduled program in the U.S., and 85% of top broadcast were sport events. Sports rights in North America are projected to be worth around $21 billion in total in 2019, and that's according to PwC. And then looking ahead, they expect that figure to climb up to almost $24 billion by 2022, and they see some of that growth being driven up by new bidders. And we'll see the first real litmus test of these new bidders coming in 2020 when the rights to NFL Sunday Night Football games come up for bidding. At this point, it seems probably likely that Comcast's NBC Universal retains those rights, or maybe some tech bidders such as Amazon, Facebook, Google parent Alphabet, through its YouTube, come in and maybe split some of those rights. But it's pretty hard to imagine these big properties such as the NFL are just going to go digital outright anytime soon. So it's more likely you see what's going on with Thursday Night Football, which it's on Fox, and then also Amazon has those live streaming rights. So you could see that being a big kind of non-exclusive partnerships going forward. But then some news came out recently that Disney and Amazon are trying to compete for the streaming rights of NFL Sunday Ticket, because the NFL is currently reportedly, based on multiple reports from NBC News and other outlets last week, that the NFL is expected to opt out of its current Sunday Ticket deal with AT&T. So we could maybe see Amazon or Disney, as the report mentions, try to swoop in and get some of those streaming rights from for NFL Sunday Ticket. So now we're going to kind of take a look at where the streaming sports space is at the moment and the overall streaming space in general as linear TV slowly fades. So as some of our listeners might know, 21st Century Fox sold off its film and TV studios, betting that a smaller Fox made up of pretty much just its Fox News channel and its main channel, which has NFL football and baseball and all that stuff, that it's slimmed down. Fox Sports in news will be competitive in this new media market. Meanwhile, Disney, who bought these big components from Fox for roughly $71 billion, sees its future as streaming. The entertainment giant is now pushing all in on streaming. They talked about that recently at an investors meeting. So we're going to start with Disney and see what they're trying to do in this streaming space, and specifically in streaming sports. So the company launched its standalone streaming sports service, ESPN Plus, in April of 2018, so almost a year ago at the moment. It's a $4.99 a month price point at the moment. ESPN Plus, the last reported figures had over 2 million paid subscribers, which was double from that period of time from 5 months earlier. And so this could be even higher at this point. And it's pretty impressive considering that ESPN Plus is hardly a replacement for ESPN outright at this moment. ESPN's Plus content does not really feature any of ESPN's real premier content. There's no Monday Night Football. There's no big-time NBA basketball. There's no big-time college football or basketball. Instead, it's some NHL games, Major League Baseball games, lower-level college sports, and less popular college sports like lacrosse and stuff like that. And then you also have ESPN really pushing forward that ESPN Plus is going to be a way where UFC and fight fans can watch that content. So they've done huge partnerships with UFC, also Major League Soccer, and then they even have Italian League Soccer on there, and then some shows that aren't available anywhere else. So they're able to grow this business relatively quickly and at a big scale without having that much on there. So going forward, you could see ESPN Plus slowly being able to transition maybe into, who knows, 5-10 years, an option where people don't have to have a cable subscription at all, and they could get a standalone version of just ESPN, which is where it's going to be eventually, but it's unsure exactly when it'll be there. At this point, and this ESPN Plus came, the official, it launched a year before Disney officially is now putting out its Disney Plus service, which is going to be Disney content, Pixar content, National Geographic, Star Wars, Marvel, and that is now set to officially launch on November 12th of 2019, and that's going to be at a $6.99 per month price target, and Disney hopes that service will compete alongside or against Netflix, which now is costing at least $13 for most of the plans. And then overall, just to give people a perspective on how important ESPN still is for Disney and the overall linear TV landscape, ESPN charges over $8 per subscriber to cable packages each month, which is by far the highest. The second highest is Yes Network, which charges around $6.50. And this is part of the reason that Disney had to divest its 22 regional sports networks that it acquired from Fox as part of its deal. And the Yankees and part of another investor group helped buy back that Yes Network, which was kind of the crown jewel of those 22 regional sports networks. And now Fox Business is reporting late last week that Sinclair Broadcasting and Disney reached a handshake agreement for Sinclair to pay $10 billion for the rest of 21st Century Fox's regional sports network. So we'll have more updates on that maybe in the next few weeks or so, but it seems like Disney is going to get out from underneath those regional sports networks that they needed to sell. But in the end, Disney with ESPN Plus and Disney Plus, along with all of their other outlets, including parks and resorts and all of that, seems set to be able to build up this streaming business going forward and be a real player alongside Netflix and then Amazon, which is the next company we're going to be talking about. So as some football fans might know, and as we already kind of touched on at the top, Amazon has really pushed heavily into live sports in the last couple of years. This includes their Thursday Night Football coverage. And Amazon this past season agreed to pay about $65 million per season to stream 2 more seasons of Thursday Night Football on Amazon Prime Video, which is about 30% more than it paid for its first ever season of Thursday Night Football. But as we mentioned, they're currently sharing that rights with Fox. So Fox has the regular TV broadcast on Thursday nights, and then the streaming home is Amazon Prime. And going forward, if Amazon wants to be able to compete like ESPN in this streaming future, they're going to need to have their own infrastructure of all of this and have to build out talent and all of that. Because at this point, they're really just rebroadcasting Fox's coverage. So going forward, they have to try to figure out what they're doing there. But at the moment, they have over 100 million Prime subscribers globally. And this membership helps, obviously, with their e-commerce business, which helps boost profit. But also this Amazon Prime Video is included in that. And they're really trying to get not only content that's similar with movies and TV shows, they're also, like ESPN Plus, they're really jumping into other sports besides just the NFL. They signed an agreement with the Premier League to stream 20 matches in the UK, which is a big deal, across the holiday period in December. So they paid £30 million per match, or between 23 to roughly $23 million per match, which it's varying per match, but it's a big deal over in the UK starting this upcoming season. For fans who aren't, or sports fans or anyone who doesn't really know what that means for the Premier League in the UK over that holiday block, it would be kind of like if some British company came in and won the rights to NBA Christmas Day games or NFL on Thanksgiving, something like that. And at the moment, Amazon sees some of these expensive sports rights like Thursday Night Football in this UK coverage of the Premier League kind of as a loss leader to draw more customers and then eventually make money down the road. And Amazon is also experimenting with its Twitch platform, which it bought, which is a huge streaming platform for esports and gaming. They've been doing some NBA G League coverage. And it's also a way that they're just exposing more people to what their sports coverage is as well. And so at this moment, they also see their streaming sports business as a way to also build up their ad business, which is now the third largest in the US behind only Google and Facebook. So as we've mentioned now, Amazon is obviously a massive company. Amazon Prime Video is a very small portion of that. Live streaming sports is an even smaller portion of that. But along with Disney, Amazon Prime looks to be a company that could really be a big player in this streaming sports world where live streaming actually matters, unlike Netflix, who has said at this point they don't want to get into any type of live content. They're only focused on on-demand movies and TV shows. So then another company I want to quickly talk about before we kind of round out what's going on is AT&T's Turner Broadcasting, which owns Bleacher Report. In Bleacher Report, they bought as a digital sports media site for $180 million back in 2012. And at that point, it was kind of just an online website for people to read about sports, all types of content. And now they've really grown into be a live streaming sports player. So at this point, you could all watch all of the UEFA Champions League, which is a big soccer competition, the Europa League, for $9.99 a month for fans. An annual pass costs $80. You could buy individual games, which is something that I've talked about on this podcast before, which has a big potential to be a revenue driver going forward for this company. You can buy individual games for $3. They also do NBA League Pass through Bleacher Report Live and other outlets through Turner as well. They're experimenting with these micro payments last season where you can spend 99 cents and watch the last 10 minutes of the game or the fourth quarter. And going down, you could even, down the road, they can even maybe do smaller payments. So that'll be something to watch. And then what Bleacher Report is gaining from as well is that the NBA League Pass has grown huge outside of the U.S. At this point, for the last several years, maybe if not more, the NBA itself, in terms of players, 25% of the league has been international players, so not born here in the U.S. So that's a really big revenue possibility to grow for this company down the road. For instance, this past season, some of the more well-known younger players were from outside of the U.S., and they saw subscriptions for NBA League Pass in Europe jump by 21% this season. So that's big news for them going forward. So that's a company to pay attention to, with soccer and basketball being two of the bigger international sports, especially with millennials, who are the people who are native to this streaming sports world. So at the moment, I see really the big three players in the early streaming sports sector, and maybe going forward for years to come, as Disney, Amazon, and then AT&T. And then obviously you still have NBC and CBS and Fox, who own these rights, because owning the rights in the long run will be a key point. And then Facebook is another company to pay attention to. They spent some money this past year to grab the Spanish League soccer rights for the Indian subcontinent. So La Liga, they won the rights to show that league, which is a pretty big league in Europe with some of the more well-known players in Bangladesh, India, Nepal, Afghanistan, Pakistan, and some other countries in that Indian subcontinent. So with a huge population base, they see them maybe getting into cricket rights, which is huge in India as well going forward. And Facebook is one of these other companies that's also trying to explore that live streaming business to get more people coming to the platform in the long run and spend more time, which is helpful to its ad business, which is how it makes 99% of its money. And then Twitter is another company that has experimented with live streaming sports. They do Major League Soccer games, NHL, Major League Baseball, and the niche is kind of the king for a lot of these smaller companies. Twitter recently just signed a deal to stream the Jordan Brand Classic, which is a high school basketball all-star tournament. So this is the kind of business where these smaller companies can really in the streaming space thrive with these more niche kind of one-off sporting events that are definitely never going to be something you would see on regular television. And then you also have YouTube doing stuff. They just signed a deal with NBA 2K League, which is an esports league, which, as I mentioned, esports are going to grow in the future. They're already growing at a rapid pace. So they're now going to stream the second season of the NBA 2K League. For those of you who don't know, NBA 2K is owned by Take-Two Interactive, and it's part of that esports league. The NBA was the first big North American professional league to have its own subsidiary esports league, so pay attention to that going forward. I can see the NFL maybe being the next league that does that with its really popular Madden franchise. So along with YouTube, those games are still going to be streamed on Amazon's Twitch, so that's a joint kind of revenue stream for both Amazon and Google going forward. And now I quickly want to just talk about some options for sports fans now that are already out there for people who want to cut the cord. YouTube TV is a $50 a month subscription service that's basically trying to do what cable's doing, like offering you your cable package without it being a cable package, and you're just streaming it through your Wi-Fi. Roughly 70 plus networks, includes sports, news, and they're really trying to lure those cord cutters as a cable-free option to watch cable in the basic sense. And then you also have Hulu Live, which is doing exactly what YouTube TV is doing, and they're trying to lure specifically that sports fan. They've rolled out a lot of commercials in the last several months, specifically with a lot of NBA players focused on really trying to get anyone who's thinking about, the only reason I'm holding on to my cable is so I can watch sports. Here, we're an option for you to come. We have all the sports you'd want to watch. Cut the cord and come to Hulu Live. So you have all of that for Hulu, YouTube TV. And then in general, I just kind of want to look at some of the costs, because this is something my producer and Danny and I have talked about a lot, with people cutting the cord as a way to save money. Slowly, maybe in the long run, it might end up being where it's almost a similar cost when you're counting up all that you're paying for at this point. But in average, the average cable bill last year, according to Leitchman Research Group, was $107 per month. So pretty hefty fees, and that's up from $71 in 2010. But then if you just quickly look at some of the costs of what these subscription services that are already out there, it slowly, you kind of get up to that number. So HBO at this point costs $15 a month. Amazon Prime, which you'd get the Amazon Prime Video, costs $120 a year, and $59.99 for students. You have Netflix now; their most popular kind of high-end account costs $16. Disney Plus, when it launches in November, is going to cost $7. YouTube TV costs $50 a month. Hulu Live TV costs $45 a month. So those are just some of the initial ones that people are thinking about buying or might already have all together. And then you have Apple rolling out. So we'll see what happens. And some of the companies that are sneakily going to win no matter what are Comcast and AT&T and all of the other internet providers, because no matter what, you're cutting the cord, but you still need great Wi-Fi to get, or internet connection to get, say, YouTube TV or Hulu Live TV. And then I also want to just quickly close with the last thing I'm going to note is that the only big problem for some of these businesses going forward is that there's always going to be people, especially with just how much stuff is out there on the internet, and it's almost impossible to enforce any of this, is how many people are streaming things for free that these companies are spending billions of dollars on for their rights, which according to the Associated Press, Reddit. There's a Reddit stream Reddit segment devoted to just finding NBA game streams throughout the season without license, so just illegally streaming. And there's almost 500,000 people in this one Reddit group that's just dedicated to finding illegal streams of NBA games. And then you had the BBC found that a third of Premier League soccer fans regularly watched what they called, quote, unofficial games streamed on the internet. So that's always going to be a problem for these companies going forward. But in conclusion, Disney, Amazon, and some other companies really look poised to dominate this streaming sports future. But in my opinion, Disney and Amazon look ready to kind of widen the gap between their nearest competition, especially when you think that Netflix at this point has still committed to saying we're never going to get into that live streaming business. But that does it for another episode of Full Court Finance. As a reminder, make sure you subscribe and leave a review wherever you listen to your podcast, and email us over at podcast@zax.com with any questions or episode suggestions. I'm your host, Ben Rains.